The year is 1997, and there's a new video game console that's out and about. It's got things like Twisted Metal, Tomb Raider, Resident Evil, oh my god! And of course that orange marsupial we like to call Crash Bandicoot. All of this and more on the Sony PlayStation. And I hadn't played any of that because my mom got me an N64 for Christmas. But I saw the CD cases in my local video store, and I saw the commercials. And there was one commercial that immediately caught my interest.
An evil empire is sucking the life force from the planet, destroying all that's in its path. It's up to one soldier of fortune to save the world. If he succeeds, you survive. Final Fantasy VII. Only on PlayStation.
Oh my god! That looks insane! This is a video game? Wait a minute. Final Fantasy VII? When was there a 4, 5, and 6? Having played 2 of these games already and really loving them to death, of course I had to play this game. Unfortunately, this would be when Squaresoft distanced themselves from Nintendo to take advantage of the CD-ROM technology that the PlayStation had to offer. I didn't own a PlayStation, and my mom sure wasn't going to shell out money to buy me another game console so soon. But one day she went out for some drinks and she got my older cousin Terry to babysit me for the night. As it turned out, he just recently bought a PlayStation for himself, and he just rented the game we were both excited for. He had Final Fantasy VII. I was so damn excited. This was my first ever PlayStation game. And it was one of the best gaming experiences I ever had. I lost my shit! The upgrade from Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy VII was ginormous! Battles were entirely 3D, everything was made up of polygons now, and enemies had their own unique animations. The pre-rendered FMV cutscenes were amazing, and seamlessly integrated into gameplay. The soundtrack? I didn't want to talk over it! I just wanted to watch my cousin play and take in the amazing atmosphere. An atmosphere that you'll notice was drastically different from every Final Fantasy before it. It was modern. There weren't any kings and castles. Now we had corporations and skyscrapers. People drove around in cars and motorcycles, and people used machine guns. I was not prepared for any of this. And in gaming, Final Fantasy VII was one of the leading pioneers of RPGs. It broke new ground in what the genre was capable of, and it put the names of both the PlayStation as well as Final Fantasy on the map. Some people knew about 6. Everyone knew about 7. After a time, I eventually got my own PlayStation and my own copy of FF7, and this became a video game that I completely fell in love with. I've brought it up before in videos, but if you're new to this channel, let me stress something right now. Final Fantasy VII is my favorite Final Fantasy game. But more than that, it's one of my favorite video games, period. I'm talking like top 3 video games I've ever played. It's right up there with Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as a game that I have played through numerous times from start to finish, and it never gets old for me. I still love the characters, I still love the music, I still love the gameplay, and going through this game for the retrospective was super easy to do. This game means a lot to me, and I'm going to have a difficult task of trying to explain why. But I'll give it a shot anyway. As always, this video will contain full spoilers, so if you've never experienced the game before, maybe play it first so I don't ruin the surprises. But, without further ado, let's talk about the most popular game in the series, Final Fantasy VII. Our story begins in the giant megacity known as Midgar. Midgar is the main hub of operations for the Shinra Electric Power Company, a conglomerate that basically runs the entire planet with its military, its vast technology, and is the sole dominating force when it comes to Mako distribution. Mako is an energy force that comes deep from beneath the planet's surface, and its power has improved the lives of many. But one group residing in Midgar don't quite see it that way. Enter Avalanche, a freedom fighter terrorist organization that's boarded a train and infiltrated one of Shinra's major Mako reactors. Their members? A girl named Jessie, two guys named Biggs and Wedge, and their leader, an angry foul-mouthed black man named Barrett Wallace. A guy who may as well be the spitting image of Mr. T from the A-Team, who has replaced his handicapped arm with a freaking machine gun! Holy shit! Do not mess with the one-armed man. And they're joined by our main character, a mercenary who used to be one of the top soldiers in Shinra's army, Cloud Strife. No doubt you've probably seen him before. I mean, look at the guy. Anytime you think of RPG parodies, they're usually doing a mock-up of Cloud. The spiky blonde hair, the one-color uniform, and his iconic weapon, the Buster Sword, a giant piece of metal with a tiny handle that has no business being lifted by Cloud. But man, what a character design. That's a leading star for a video game if I ever saw one. Avalanche is going after Shinra because, as Barrett puts it, Mako isn't just an energy source to power large cities. It's the lifeblood of the planet itself. And slowly but surely, Shinra is killing the planet. They're evil, and they need to be stopped. Avalanche is successful. They set up a bomb inside the reactor and destroy it, killing enemies and innocent people alike in the process. As far as Barrett is concerned, the ends justify the means. Cloud, however, doesn't care about Avalanche's ideology. He might not have any fondness for the Shinra, but he isn't here for them. He only joined this mission for two reasons: the money, and also as a personal favor to another member of the group, a woman named Tifa, one of his childhood friends from their hometown of Nibelheim. A woman who Cloud promised one day that he would join Soldier and become a great legendary warrior. Just like the most famous soldier, a man named Sephiroth. He also promised that he would protect Tifa once he succeeded, and now that they're all grown up, Tifa asks him to help her with Avalanche for just a little bit longer. He agrees, and the group focus on taking out another reactor. The second mission has a bit of a snag, however, when Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa actually encounter the head of the company on their way out. President Shinra personally meets the group to unleash a giant robot weapon on them. Our heroes successfully defeat the robot, but this causes a massive explosion which rocks Cloud and leaves him hanging on the ledge, only to lose his grip and fall to the lower sections of Midgar, and surely to his demise. Luckily for him, though, he crashes through the roof of a church and ends up landing on a soft flower bed. It's here that Cloud gets acquainted with a flower girl named Aerith, a woman who claims to be the last in a long line of people who refer to themselves as the Cetra, the Ancients, people who have a physical connection with the spirits of the planet itself. So yes, Aerith hears voices in her head. I'd play Randy Orton's wrestling theme right now, but I don't want WWE to take my video down. And it's because of this lineage that the Shinra want to capture Aerith and use her power. As soon as Cloud meets Aerith, she's immediately getting visited by one of Shinra's Turks, a special task group that deals in kidnapping, assassination, and whatever matter is most urgent. After saving her life from these pricks, Cloud decides to regroup with Avalanche, but Aerith is adamant that she helped guide him back to their home in Sector 7. Despite Cloud's attempts to sneak off without her, she joins his party against his will. After regrouping with Tifa, Cloud discovers that Avalanche has been compromised. Shinra knows that the members are coming from Sector 7, and so, in a desperate attempt to get rid of them for good, they plan to blow up the supports holding up Midgar's higher plate, effectively crushing everything that lives there. President Shinra and his executives know that there will be innocent casualties, but they just don't care. So if you had doubts that Shinra was evil, this pretty much solidifies it. Cloud and friends are too late. Avalanche's members are beaten and there's no way to stop the bomb. And to make matters worse, the Turks end up grabbing Aerith in the confusion after she rescues Barrett's daughter Marlene and gets her out of danger. Grabbing a nearby crane, Barret, Cloud, and Tifa barely escape as the plate falls. Tons of innocent people are killed. Avalanche is dead, and Shinra has blood on its hands. Beyond the obvious tragedy, Cloud feels personally responsible for Aerith getting involved, and Barret, thankful to her for saving his daughter, feels he owes her a debt as well. And so the remaining 3 members of Avalanche go on a risky suicide mission to infiltrate Shinra HQ and rescue her themselves. And just in the nick of time, because Shinra's head of science research, a crazy batshit scientist named Professor Hojo, was just in the process of trying to force Aerith to breed with a giant red lion creature. No, really, I'm not making that up. He planned to have Aerith, a human flower girl, have sex with a lion to preserve her species because she is the last remaining Cetra. For science, of course! This isn't even the tip of the iceberg that is the weirdness of Final Fantasy VII. But I'll get back to all of that stuff I glossed over, don't you worry. Before saving Aerith, Cloud also finds a container marked Genova that happens to have a headless monster inside, and Cloud recognizes what this is. But anywho, the gang saves Aerith from Hojo, and it turns out the lion inside is actually capable of speaking perfect English and wants to escape with them. He says they can call him whatever they want, and so they go with his lab name, Red 13. The escape goes well! Except when they get captured immediately as soon as they reach the elevator. Don't! Before being locked away, President Shinra explains that Aerith will guide them to the Promised Land, a place of legend that is supposed to be abundant in Mako energy, giving them the power to do whatever they want for centuries. And since our heroes are prisoners, sure to be executed for their terrorist crimes, there's nothing they can do about it. Our heroes are then taken to their prison cells, and then they go to sleep. And when they wake up, the doors are open, and almost everyone inside the building has been murdered. Zuh? It's actually kind of a haunting moment as all of the backgrounds are now covered in giant scratches and blood is smeared everywhere. There's even random encounter battles against tons of monsters that must have gotten loose. And when everyone reaches the top, they find not only has Genova's container been busted wide open with the monster inside gone, but President Shinra is in his office. Dead. With a giant sword right through his back. The same sword that was used by the legendary soldier, Sephiroth. The gang thinks, oh wow, Sephiroth just did a number here, he must be a good guy, and Cloud crushes that train of thought real quick. Sephiroth? A good guy? No way! Cloud knows the truth. He knows that Sephiroth is as evil as they come, and if he's come back, then the world's in trouble. And this isn't the end of the Shinra, as while the president may be dead, the executives weren't around, and Shinra's son, Rufus, is now taking the role of president. Oh, and he thought his father's ways of ruling the world with a smile was stupid, so he's gonna police the world with fear. What a great guy. But finally, with Shinra taken aback and an opening to leave, our heroes escape from Shinra's building in style, and they manage to make it to the outskirts of Midgar itself. Cloud explains that if Sephiroth's back, then they need to find him and stop him before he ends up destroying the world. And with that, you finally make it to the world map and the game begins proper. I'm sorry for the giant setup to the game's plot, but seriously, it takes 4 to 5 hours just to leave the megacity of Midgar. Everything that happens in the city is but a prologue to the rest of the game's events, and it's a pretty fascinating intro if I do say so myself. Atmosphere is one of Final Fantasy VII's strong suits. Every time I replay this game, I still get caught up in the world like I did when I was 10 years old. When you're just walking around the streets of Midgar, when you're catching up with Tifa in Avalanche's bar, or even getting a lecture of the class divide as you ride on the trains. All of these moments feel real. Instead of seeing the same patch of grass or the same house texture like I would in the previous 6 games, every single background is unique and different from the next. No house or shop you enter is going to look like the last house or shop you were just in. Every area has its own design. They paint the picture of a fascinating city that has higher and lower classes, where the poor can't see the sky because of a giant plate suspended above them. But people still have gyms to train in, TVs to watch, and churches to pray to. Midgar was incredibly fascinating to experience, and it doesn't hurt that you have a musical genius like Nobuo Uematsu pumping emotion into every place you go. He still brings the usual playful intensity with this soundtrack, but FF7 really delivers with a lot of somber, quieter tracks as well. I still get emotional thinking about this place. Seeing Final Fantasy on the PlayStation was such a mind-blowing experience 20 years ago. Thanks to the bigger memory, Square was able to create a whole bunch of special FMV cutscenes for the game to bring some incredible special events that were never possible before. The most intense things ever got in the previous games was seeing a Mode 7 meteor fall out of the sky, or seeing a pullback of the planet as it burns up and the continents split apart. Technical limitations were always holding things back, but now they can whip up whatever crazy background they want and program the characters appropriately. Now they can go, hey, let's animate a big scene where a reactor blows up, 'cause why not? These moments were so special to me. I was always looking forward to the next cool thing, whether it be a close-up of Sephiroth looking badass, or a crazy escape from the Shinra on an airplane. There was so much more imagination on display. And they made so many cutscenes for FF7 that the game had to be shipped on 3 PlayStation discs. I remember when I was a kid and I saw the 3 discs, I was like, 3 whole discs? This has got to be the bestest, biggest game in the world! Whoa! And when it came to the battles themselves, they also injected a lot more personality than ever before. The camera was no longer stationary. When Cloud and friends would cast the fire spell, we would get these cinematic camera angles, and we get to see all the monsters react to the damage they were taking. They weren't just sprites that stood in place. Now they were breathing and swinging and dancing or whatever. If Rufus attacked me, he didn't just flash white. His character model would aim the shotgun and he'd pull the trigger. And instead of running away by turning transparent, nah, Rufus is gonna grab onto a helicopter and fly away, because fuck yeah he can. Final Fantasy VII really did take the visuals and presentation to a whole nother level. But the game still has its own limitations even still. In battles, Cloud and company were a lot more detailed. You can see Barrett's facial hair and tattoo prominently when he's in battle, but when Barrett's outside of it, well, that's a different story. Because of how many characters could be on screen at a time in certain situations, their polygons still had to be limited. Cloud looks great in battles. He looks amazing in the FMV cutscenes. But outside, his character model is pretty darn silly. Big anime eyes, no facial features to speak of, and these little pipe cleaner arms with massive forearms. By 2017 standards, oh for sure it's dated. But it's never killed the storytelling for me. If anything, I think these character models have a certain charm to them. Their animations are still fine, and the roly-poly anime thing going on actually adds to some of the weirder and quirkier scenes in the game. It's a product of its time, and for me, some retro video games never go out of style. It's a huge leap in technology, but does the game still play well? Well, it's my favorite game in the series, so yeah, I'd say so. It's still at heart turn-based, using the active time battles that started in 4. You're still going to be using all the magic spells we're familiar with, stealing items, buying Phoenix Downs, and trying to avoid being turned to stone or poisoned or whatever. But this time around, the game revolves around these magic rocks known as Materia. Materia are basically condensed Mako, special little jewels that actually summon forth the elements to wherever you are. And they are the most important equipment when it comes to giving your characters extra abilities. Without Materia, characters can only attack with a weapon and use items. And there are 4 kinds of Materia in the game. Green Materia usually acts as your magic abilities. Fire, ice, the cure spell, anything that allows characters to cast one certain thing. Yellow Materia acts as secondary skills. If you want to cover characters from damage like a knight, steal things like a thief, or learn enemy abilities like a blue mage, these are the materia you'll want to equip. Purple materia give bonuses relating to your stats. Things like HP, MP, magic, or luck plus will increase how much health and magic you have. And then you also got things like long range, where if you're in the back row, you'll do just as much damage as if you were in the front row. And then there's red materia, which act as summon stones. Ifrit, Shiva, Ramu, Leviathan, the usual gang are all here to deal out tons of damage for you when you call them. There's a ton of materia to collect in the game, but this adds an interesting limitation to what your characters can do. See, if you want to use any of this materia, you have to equip them to your weapons and armor. Every individual piece of equipment may or may not have its own materia slots. At the beginning of the game, Cloud's Buster Sword can only hold 2. His default armor can hold none. So in early game, he can only hold 1 Cure and Lightning spell. And that's it. There's also blue materia that can be paired with other materia to get a bonus effect. Some weapons have materia slots that are linked, and this is when you pair 2 of them up. One blue materia is the all materia. Fire by itself will only hit 1 target, even if you're fighting 5 or 6 enemies at a time. But if you pair it with all, then you can hit everybody. This applies to healing magic as well. If a boss hits everybody with a massive group attack, well, you can only heal 1 person with the cure spell, so you better pair it with all as soon as you can. Now with each town you visit or treasure chest you open, you're going to find new equipment with far better materia slots, so you'll be more capable as the game goes on. But I like that unlike Final Fantasy VI, you aren't just capable of doing everything as soon as you start collecting Magicite. You gotta plan out what character should be the healer, what character needs to hold on to blue magic, and what character needs to use long range and hide in the back, and yada yada yada. Materia also have a level up function tied to them. For each battle you take part in, you gain ability points. And after a while, the fire materia can level up, and boom! Now you can cast Fire 2. And if a piece of materia levels up all the way and you master it, then that piece duplicates and you get another one. So while you can only find 1 double cut materia in the game, if you keep mastering it, you'll get a whole bunch so that everyone can double cut. Keep in mind though, some weapons may have materia slots, but they might not accept ability points. If the growth is at none, then you're just holding onto it and using the magic, but nothing is improving. Pay attention to weapon descriptions. I also like that materia is interchangeable and isn't tied to one person. With the last game's Magicite, you were building up individual characters, and when the final act of the game started, if you didn't invest in magic with Celeste, Edgar, or Setzer, you had to build that up right then and there. With materia, should a character disappear for a bit, they don't take with them a really good healer. You can give that healing materia to someone else, and they can continue where they left off. I love that. It's a system with a little bit of limitation, and yet all the freedom in the world to customize your fighters as you see fit. It actually encourages you to switch out your party members often, and the good news is that even if you don't use certain party members, they do level up off-screen. Dragging behind you, sure, but never to the point that you can't use them for any given situation. I love the materia system. It's one of my favorite mechanics in a Final Fantasy game, and I'd love to see future games use something like this again. It's super good. As for what's new mechanically, for the first time in the series, the main party has been shrunk down to 3 party members instead of the usual 4. This makes what materia you use all the more important, and can make it quicker for things to go south with 1 less person to stay alive. But the best thing about Final Fantasy VII ever introduced into the series would be the limit break. Next to your health and time gauge is now a limit meter. Whenever your character takes damage from enemies, this meter fills up a little. The bigger the damage, the more it will fill. And if the meter fills up all the way, then characters will get access to some devastating super moves which can be used to kill your enemies with a lot of damage, or give the party a huge boost in health or defense. It also makes your first move with the limit sudden. Your time meter activates quickly as soon as you reach it, and no matter if you chose another party member's attack before, the limit break will take priority as soon as you use it. I love the concept of limit breaks. Desperation moves for when your characters keep getting beaten up. A fun way to help turn the tide when things get a little hairy. And it's always nice to just drop a whole bunch of meteors on things with Cloud. And everybody has a whole bunch of limit breaks. You collect more with how many enemies you kill and how many times you go into limits. And each party member will get their own unique kinds. Tifa, for example, uses martial arts moves with this slot system mechanic, and these all stack up. So by the end of the game, Tifa will perform at least 8 different powerful physical attacks until she sends her enemies to their final heaven. Cait Sith uses luck in his limit breaks. Whether a roll of the dice or a slot machine, this cat can have a really good attack, or be incredibly underwhelming. And then you got Vincent, whose limit breaks are essentially transformations, with each being a unique berserker style. I guess he's kind of the Gao or Umaru of the group. These limit breaks are fun, but I won't deny that they are the only things that make party members stand out from each other. I mean, yeah, Barret, Yuffie, and Vincent use long-ranged weapons and can hit enemies others can't, but this isn't like Final Fantasy IV or VI. Cid Highwind joins the party, and he's essentially the Dragoon. He uses spears, his limit breaks are all about jumping into the sky and landing on enemies, and yet, Cid can't use the jump feature like Kain before him. Tifa doesn't use blitz moves like Sabin, and Yuffie doesn't throw things like a ninja. It's a little bit of a step down, but I do think the limit breaks are enough to differentiate. And besides, do you want another OP party member like Edgar was in 6? I'm fine with certain abilities becoming Materia. It adds a little more strategy, and it makes you earn your special perks. I will say though that this game did streamline other things. If you get poisoned in a battle, it wears off as soon as the battle ends. When enemies try to turn you into stone, there's now a 30-second timer before it happens, and it isn't instantaneous. Meaning, if you win fights quick enough, you don't really need antidotes or softs, now do ya? And the one step down that will stay with the entire PlayStation trilogy is that the main character can't leave the party. Terra or Celeste were not necessary for your party in 6, and the first 5 games didn't have tons of party members to exchange with. But in 7, you have to use Cloud no matter what. Meaning with battles, you're really only choosing 2 people for your party. And it's weird because there are moments where Cloud is not in the party and the battles operate just fine, but since he makes so many narrative choices and he's so integral to the plot, they want him to always be playable. Cloud has the best limit breaks in the game, so it's not a real big deal, but hey, it is a thing in case you don't like that. So the game has our heroes journeying across the world, chasing after and trying to stop the legendary soldier known as Sephiroth. While resting in the town of Kalm, Cloud explains that when he joined Soldier, he and Sephiroth became associates. They fought together often, and he never saw anyone else with strength like his. One day, they got a mission to investigate monster appearances in the mountains of Nibelheim, which is Cloud's hometown. There he ran into Tifa again, who guided them to Mount Nibel's Mako reactor. Inside, Cloud and Sephiroth discover the terrible secret that Shinra has actually been creating monsters inside the reactor. The work of our batshit scientist Hojo, no doubt. And it turns out one of the monsters inside is labeled Genova. But wait, Hojo told Sephiroth that his mother's name was Genova. Is he the offspring of a monster? Is he a monster too? Sephiroth loses it and starts slashing everything with his sword. Later, he holds up in Nibelheim's Shinra mansion and does a lot of reading. He learns that Genova is actually an alien that came from outer space, a monster which has the wicked power to make people see things that aren't really there, and it took great pleasure in trying to eliminate the Cetra. The Shinra eventually found it and locked it away to experiment with its cells. Turns out every member of Soldier has Genova cells inside of them. Sephiroth reads how he was the first of the Genova Project, produced by Shinra's top scientists to be Genova's child. And this is when he just goes batshit crazy and decides that all of the humans who treated her badly need to die. Genova was destined to rule the planet, but now he is the chosen one. He will become the rightful ruler, as Mother intended. And then he goes on a killing spree, straight up burning Nibelheim to the ground, even killing Cloud's mother in the process. Tifa's father was also killed, and this led to her trying to get revenge, only to get slashed across the chest. So Cloud decides to end this. He and Sephiroth prepare for battle, and Cloud can't remember what happened next. Cloud's memory is filled with holes. He can remember a bit of his childhood, but so many of the things in between have escaped him. Constantly throughout the game, he's getting painful reminders of his past, and we, the player, start to feel that maybe there's something off about Cloud as we go through the game. But with that story, everyone agrees that they need to stop Sephiroth. They journey across the world, visiting the city of Junon, the mining town of Corel, Red 13's home of Cosmo Canyon, all trying to catch up to our villain. whose plan now involves hunting down a weapon of destruction known as the Black Materia. This Materia has the power to summon forth the ultimate magic spell, Meteor, but instead of raining fireballs on people like it did in Final Fantasy IV, Meteor is an actual giant rock of death that will destroy the planet as we know it. Sephiroth figures when the planet breaks, the life stream that lives in the planet will arrive to try and heal the wound, and he'll absorb all of it and become a god. And then I guess he'll try and conquer Mars, or Uranus, or some other planet because he's an idiot. Is Sephiroth one of my favorite villains in the series? Not particularly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like his character design. I like the idea of this cold guy in black who has a ridiculously long sword he'd never be able to take to the airport. Seriously, this guy would get stuck in every hallway he goes into. But he's got a fantastic theme song, and I like that the game builds up his presence, showing him doing things your main party so isn't ready for. I like the idea of him way more, what he means to the plot, what he means to Cloud. In actuality, though, Sephiroth's just kind of a crazy bastard. A religious zealot who won't stop preaching about Jehovah's Witnesses and how he's going to ascend to a higher plane and become the one true God. He always raises his arms up like he's preaching to the choir. Oh Lord, oh mercy, let me cast this meteor and eliminate the enemy before they poison the rest of the galaxy. Amen. And his big motivation for wanting to kill all life and become a god is because his mommy was a space alien? Really? That's all it took for him to go apeshit? What a mama's boy. He looks great as a leading villain, but I couldn't care less about his character. That being said, I can't wait to beat him up again in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Sure, and Sephiroth.
But yeah, the gang are traveling the world to stop him, going into lots of caves, finding treasure, and getting into tons of random battles. You know how Final Fantasy games work at this point. With new pre-rendered backgrounds comes new navigation though, and it's definitely a little weird after playing the first 6 games. Sometimes on screen, pushing up makes you move up. Other times, the map will be diagonal and pushing up will take you northwest, and sometimes northeast. And it can be a little awkward just trying to navigate rooms. But the other hard part of having so many unique backgrounds is that it can be really hard to tell what's a door and what's something you can climb. Sometimes the perspective is so pulled back that Cloud is tiny on screen. So it's a good thing that when you push select, a pointer shows up above Cloud's head, entrances and exits get a red marker, and ladders get a green one. This helps so much, and they actually take away the markers in the next 2 games for some reason. I mean, how the hell was I gonna know I could climb that particular vine without the select button? It's so inconspicuous. Still, areas don't overstay their welcome, and there's plenty of save points. This game flows perfectly. It starts with a bang, knows when to slow down, and when to pick up again. You'll never be bored playing this game. One thing I like that's different with the narrative of the game is that this time around, you actually get to occasionally decide what Cloud says in conversations. You can decide if Cloud is nice to his colleagues, and even what he thinks of his status with friends like Tifa. Aerith can ask me, is Tifa like a girlfriend? And I can go, sure, I'd like to think so. Even if it kinda backfires later when Aerith and Tifa talk to each other. And though it doesn't happen often and the game will still remain pretty linear the entire way through, every now and then you do get to change how the story would play out. For example, when Cloud, Tifa, and Barret break into Shinra headquarters in Midgar, you can actually decide to approach that situation in 2 ways. You can sneak in through the stairway, avoiding battles and going through a repetitive stairway background dozens of times, just so you can get in unnoticed. Or, you could go right through the front door and just take the fight to anything and everything as you ride the elevator to where Aerith is. There's one boss fight that is entirely optional near the end of the game where the Turks catch up to our heroes for one last fight on Shinra's orders. And really, this fight is entirely up to you. If you say, bring it on, then you get the hardest encounter with the Turks yet. But if you say, nah, let's not, then the Turks will actually stop and go, yeah, you're right. Shinra's finished. This isn't worth dying for. See you later. God, I love the Turks. There's also an affinity system at play where, depending on your words, you can find yourself growing closer to Aerith, or Tifa, or Yuffie, or even Barret. And this will change certain scenes, including a moment inside the amusement park, the Gold Saucer, where Cloud gets closer to a certain someone. This doesn't dramatically change the game, but I appreciate any system that allows for replayability. When I can talk with my friends about FF7 and describe certain moments, and then they go, "Wait, you can skip that fight with the Turks?" I live for stuff like that. Any chance to inject my own personality and have the story tailored to my tastes is always appreciated. No, it's not going to change the ending, but it is going to get me more invested in a way that the previous 6 games didn't. It's also one reason why I greatly prefer Tales of Symphonia over every other linear Tales game. But I digress. Something else I love about FF7's story, well, to put it bluntly, this game is batshit weird sometimes. I mentioned before that Hojo trying to make Aerith and Red 13 fuck and have babies was only the tip of the iceberg of the weirdness and humor in this game. Do not look up Aerith Red 13 porn on Google, by the way. This game is written in such a peculiar way that I don't think it could be made by modern-day Square Enix. This game is a lot more adult than the previous 6 games. Barret and Cid swear like sailors throughout the entire game. When they're not dropping shits and dams and hells, they're usually throwing out these gibberish words which we the player are supposed to assume are bleeped out swears. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that in this scene, Cid is saying, "Fuck! Good for nothing, fat fucker! Don't say fat!" And this game goes in really unexpected places. Oh god, the wall market. So when Cloud and Aerith are heading to Avalanche's hideout in Sector 7, they spot Tifa and find out that she's going to see Don Corneo. He's this horny mob boss who routinely has women brought to him so that he can have sex with them in his club. Cloud wants to check in on Tifa, but he isn't letting Aerith go in alone and says that there are too many armed guards. He can't take all of them on in a fight. So Aerith comes up with the brilliant idea of making Cloud cross-dressed like a woman so that he can sneak in as one of Corneo's potential sex partners. Again, I'm not making this up. Now most players are going to get the wig, get the dress, go into Corneo's mansion immediately, and not get picked up by the Don. You'll eventually shed your disguise, take on all the armed guards anyway, and save whichever girl was picked. But you can go out of your way to make Cloud sexier. Gathering perfume, makeup, sexy underwear. No, really, Cloud can potentially wear sexy women's underwear. Well, if it's to save Tifa. The Wall Market area is essentially the red light district, and inside it, to get the things you'll need, you have to visit a brothel called the Honey Bee Inn. And every room here is amazing. You can spy on one room and actually catch President Shinra, dressed as a king, having a roleplay fantasy where he's saving a damsel in distress from some evil force. I did not want to know about the president's sex habits. I mean, at least he isn't getting pissed on by Russian hookers, but still! One of the rooms in the Honey Bee Inn is just straight up called the fuck room. This is amazing! And inside, Cloud immediately gets surrounded by 8 bodybuilder guys who all take Cloud to the hot tub and proceed to either wash his body or potentially fuck him. It hurts. What hurts? Daddy's so lonely! Oh my god! So eventually Cloud gets all the materials he needs and goes to Don Corneo, and he is so damn sexy and convincing as a woman that he gets picked over Tifa and Aerith. So you go into the Don's bedroom and you can engage in sexy talk with the horny mob boss. What do you want to do? Whatever you want, Daddy. Oh my god, sweet Jesus! You have my permission to look up Don Corneo and Cloud porn, because this is hot! The girls eventually arrive and interrupt Cloud just as he's about to kiss Corneo. But I'm intrigued. How far was Cloud actually going to go here? He leaned in! He was about to make out with this guy! Final Fantasy VII is amazing. This entire scene is only 2 hours into the game. I can only imagine what first-time players think when they jump into this. When people think of Cloud, they think of the figurines, of the expanded universe, they think of the posters in their room of Cloud looking badass. And yeah, he is all of these things, but only the original game captured the playfulness and dorky aspect of the character. Cloud goes to a chocobo farm and he sees a whole bunch of chocobos in a pen. They work at him, so he decides to work back like a chocobo himself. The birds like this so much, they dance for him. The game has meaningful moments for sure, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it might just be the funniest game in the series. I live for the little oddball character moments, like when Red 13 sneaks onto a Shinra ship dressed as a regular soldier, but he has to walk on his hind legs the entire time, and his tail is sticking out of his uniform. Great disguise! 10 out of 10! At least Barrett dressed up as a sailor. A sailor with a machine gun sticking out of his arm, but still! You look like a bear wearing a marshmallow. Hojo may be a batshit scientist, but that doesn't stop him from getting some rays over at the beach. Yeah, really, he suntans in his lab coat. Oh, and Hojo has fangirl groupies for some reason. Science is sexy, after all. When Cloud and friends get to the amusement park The Gold Saucer, they talk to a mascot there who tells people's fortunes. This mascot's name is Kate Sith. Yeah, the summon from Final Fantasy VI. And I know, he's of Celtic descent, and his name is supposed to be pronounced Ketshi or whatever. Hey, when this game doesn't have voice acting and you play it for over 10 years, it's hard to break old habits just because the internet says otherwise. I still occasionally call Midgar Midgar, because it's easier to pronounce it Midgar. Is it Nibelheim or Nibelheim? I don't want to say Mount Nibel. Look, sometimes there are going to be mispronunciations, and I don't give a shit. I'm going to call him Titus, not Titus. It's Bahamut, not Bahamut.
I'm the true king, the Bahamut King!
See? This game thinks so too.
Yeah, but just look at Kate. I mean, Reed.
Oh, Sid said Kate, not Ket. Sorry, gonna keep calling him Kate Sith. This isn't the real world. It's a fantasy world. A fantasy world where Cloud can buy Korean barbecue somehow. Zuh? Anywho, the whole point of the spiel is that Kate Sith reads some bad fortunes about our heroes. This actually foreshadows the big tragedy at the end of Disc 1. So he decides that he wants to help prevent this, so he's joining the group. You can't say no either. It's so nonchalant and he just joins the party with very little resistance. Sure, Robot Cat riding a giant Moogle, you can join us on our quest to save the world from an evil swordsman? Why not? I would have killed for a scene where Cloud has to justify this to the rest of the group. Yo, Cloud, what the hell is that? Oh, that's Kate Sith. He's going to be joining us on our journey. Why? I just really like cats, okay? And this isn't different from Final Fantasy VI. Sure, Talking Moogle, sure, Berserker Yeti, you can join our group. But Kate Sith's situation is amazing because later, it turns out he's a double agent who actually works for Shinra. He's being controlled by Shinra executive Reeve, and he actively screws the party and helps out the bad guys at one point. Well, I can't say I saw that shit coming, but I bet Cloud feels like an idiot now. Now that I think about it, Cloud's pretty chill with who joins his crew. They run into an ex-pilot for Shinra named Sid, and because he has no love for the Shinra and they end up grabbing his plane to escape them, he asks them if he can tag along and they just go, sure, why not? And then there are two optional party members. One is a ninja girl named Yuffie who players can run into anytime they're battling in a forest. She has a good chance of showing up, and if you beat her, Cloud sarcastically tells her she's super great, and then stops her to ask her to join the group. And so she agrees and follows everybody in the hopes of stealing everyone's materia behind their backs. And she actually does that at one point when they approach her hometown of Wutai. She steals your shit and you have to do an entire side quest without materia. And Cloud still lets her back into the group after this. Amazing. And then there's Vincent. Oh, Vincent. Vincent's a former Turk who loved this girl named Lucretia. Unfortunately, Lucretia volunteered to be Hojo's sex partner so that she could birth Sephiroth as part of the Genova project. Yeah, Hojo and Lucretia are Sephiroth's parents, and they injected their son with Genova cells when he was still in the womb. Vincent objected to the experiments, so Hojo explained the situation nicely with a gun and a bullet. He shoots Vince and experiments on him, transforming him into a monster. So when Cloud and company go into the basement of the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, they find him. Vincent is a vampire who sleeps in a coffin and is capable of transforming into other creatures, like a werebehemoth, a Frankenstein monster, and he can turn into a slasher killer who wears a hockey mask and wields a chainsaw.
What, do you want to see my new chainsaw and hockey mask?
How does one materialize a chainsaw anyway? I don't know, but Vincent has one more transformation, and it's one that gives Vincent something in common with Garland from the original Final Fantasy, because his ultimate form is to turn into the winged beast Chaos, the final boss from the first game. That's pretty neat. Too bad the limit itself is pretty shitty, but hey. I love that FF7 is just cool to have a horror movie party member. A guy who's a vampire, werewolf, Frankenstein monster, and slasher killer all in one. It's fucking ridiculous. It's the silliest, dumbest thing in the world. And I love it. This is why I love Final Fantasy VII so much. It's got one of the more out-there parties in the series. A talking lion, a guy with a minigun for an arm, a robot cat riding a giant Moogle. As Rufus so eloquently puts it, what a crew. And the crazy thing is, I genuinely like all these characters even still. The game somehow manages to blend the comedy with the drama, and I still fell in love with practically every character. Barrett Wallace is a guy who lost everything. When the Shinra visited his hometown of Corel, they promised to bring more wealth, more security, better lifestyles than they had previously as coal miners. Barrett bought into it, and he convinced the entire town to join in as well. But then the Shinra showed their true colors. They burned the town to the ground, and Barrett got injured trying to save his best friend Dyne. He lost everything, and the remaining survivors blame Barrett for everything going to shit. All he has left is Marlene. At first we assume it's his daughter, but eventually it's revealed that she was Dyne's daughter, and he's been taking care of her ever since she lost her parents. Barrett's just filled with rage. He hates Shinra for draining the planet, for destroying his home, and his anger is so strong that he just goes to the most extreme methods to take them down. Make no mistake, Avalanche did kill innocent civilians when the reactors blew up. You learn this from NPCs, Jessie regrets her actions in her dying breath, and the only person who actually calls Barrett out on what he's done is Kate Sith. When you blew the Midgar #1 up, how many folks do you think died? Barrett is dealing with all kinds of issues. The only thing that keeps him grounded is his love for Marlene, who he will do anything for to make sure she lives a happy life. There's a lot to his character, and he goes through some heavy shit during the course of the game, whether it's watching Avalanche die or reuniting with Dyne, who was thought to be dead. This meeting doesn't end well at all. But as you play the game, you totally understand all the little facets of Barrett's personality. And just before you head to the final boss, he even goes through a character growth and realizes he caused just as much pain as he received. He becomes a better person, and we, the player, empathize with him. And that's just one example of why I love these characters. Red 13 has father issues. He believed his father a coward when he was anything but. Sid lost his dream of going to outer space because of his assistant, and he takes his regret out on her. Yuffie wants to restore the glory of her home country. She's not stealing materia out of greed, she's doing it to help the people back home. She wants her people to recover from their war with the Shinra. All of the characters in your party are fully realized people. They have their motivations and their little quirks. They also grow as people as the journey goes on, and that's just satisfying storytelling. For every lolcat, silly, batshit moment that Seven can have, there's another moment that just tugs at my heartstrings and hooks me into the game's world. I also like the backdrop of the story, a world that's being drained of its resources, killed by people who take it for granted. Shinra's made up of jackals in business suits, greedy assholes more concerned with their bank account than they are at the long-term effects of their actions. I always like the little touch that every area with a reactor, completely barren, no grass to be found. But then you find one old destroyed reactor and it's the only one surrounded by a forest. No doubt put there because the life stream, the essence of all life in the planet, restored the Earth back to normal. And no one does anything because Shinra controls the message. They own the newspapers, they own the media, and they have the power to kill anyone that gets in their way. Avarice and ignorance, the downfall of humanity. It's a universal message. I mean, it's not like it's relevant today. Climate change? Pff, Chinese hoax, obviously. Hey. Anywho, things come to a head at the end of Disc 1 when Cloud and friends make it to the Temple of the Ancients, a long-forgotten ruin that's holding the Black Materia. There, Aerith tags along and actually begins communicating with all of the various spirits there, discovering new secrets she didn't know up until now. And when our heroes grab the Materia, something goes horribly wrong with Cloud. All of a sudden, the guy loses complete control over his actions, and he just straight up hands the Black Materia to Sephiroth. What the fuck, Cloud? And when Aerith tries to snap him out of it, he beats her up until Cait Sith knocks him out. During his unconscious state, Aerith tells Cloud she knows how to stop Sephiroth, but she's going to do it alone. And sure enough, when Cloud wakes up, he finds that she's left the party. It seems Sephiroth has the power to control Cloud, and this makes him a liability. Why can't he remember things? Why did he lose control like that? Cloud panics and worries, but the rest of the party convince him to keep moving. There ain't no getting off of this train, Ron, till we get to the end of the line. And now we come to one of the biggest moments in the game. Our heroes manage to track Aerith to the City of the Ancients on the northern continent. She's found praying in a special chamber when Cloud starts getting the urge to attack her again. Also to put your downs down and thrust your pelvis. Huh! Thrust your pelvis. Huh! Just as he almost caves her head in with his Buster Sword, Cloud snaps out of it in the nick of time. He broke free of the control. Oh, thank God. Everything's going to be all right. And just like that, Aerith is dead. The last remaining Cetra, one of your dear party members and a potential love interest for Cloud, is gone forever. Back then, it was one of the most shocking moments that players had ever experienced. By today, it's kind of a well-known fact, even to people who have never played the game. It's the Darth Vader is Luke's father of video game twists. But it's still very effective even today. What makes Aerith's loss hurt more than previous Final Fantasy deaths is the likability of the character. You spend so much time with this outgoing girl who lives her adventure, a girl who isn't afraid to speak her mind, one who actually has some of the snarkier and more sassy dialogue in the game. She threatens to rip off Don Corneo's dick! If you only saw the Expanded Universe or Kingdom Hearts version of the character, you're not seeing the spunky personality she actually has. And again, for some players, this made them really like her and want to ship her with Cloud. They wanted the two to end up together and live happily ever after. And that gets taken away in an instant. Usually when major characters died in previous Final Fantasies, they were old men who pushed themselves past their limits for the greater good. Still tragic, but not quite as personal. And the game could easily have copped out and had her get resurrected later. I knew tons of kids in school who asked me, "So, when does Aerith come back to the party?" And I always had to say, she doesn't. She's dead. Sorry if you spent a lot of time leveling her up, buying new weapons for her. Sorry if you found her ultimate limit break, the Great Gospel, and you want to use it some more. But she is truly and ultimately gone, and we the player have to accept that. I knew tons of people who cried to this scene. I knew people who were like, oh, Sephiroth is so dead. By now, everyone knows about this twist, but you can't deny that it was pretty ballsy and effective. It really messed with your expectations and made it clear that anything could happen. Expect the unexpected. So Sephiroth journeys to the northern crater where the Promised Land is, and this is when the game gets real plot twisty and a little confusing. So after Nibelheim burned down, Shinra rebuilt the town and placed actors inside to cover up what Sephiroth did. And in the town, Hojo continued his experiments and created Sephiroth clones. People with Genova cells and numbered tattoos who all wear black cloaks, whose job it is to ultimately help our big bad get the black materia. But he already has it, doesn't he? But what if I told you that the guy who stabbed Aerith, the guy who tore up Shinra HQ, was actually Genova this entire time? Turns out the real Sephiroth has been encased in a crystal projecting his will through Genova, who has been flinging pieces of itself at you throughout the entire game. And when you catch up to Genova again, it makes you see things that aren't really there, including a recreation of the events of Nibelheim where Sephiroth tries to convince Cloud that he is just a puppet and that he was never there. The soldier who accompanied Sephiroth was a different man, a man with black hair named Zack. Cloud's ready to deny it, but Tifa confirms the story. Wait, what? Cloud loses it. Everything he's ever known is a lie. He's just a tool, another one of Hojo's creations. Tifa tries to convince him that this isn't the case, but it's too little too late. Cloud gets the black materia back, only to hand it to the real physical body of Sephiroth. And this is where everything goes to shit. Tons of monsters start pouring out of the northern crater. Giant kaiju creatures known as weapons, created by the planet to destroy any evil that would harm it in times of need. And boy are they needed, because as soon as Sephiroth got the black materia, he sure as hell used it. And that takes us to the worst case scenario. Cloud is missing, lost after Sephiroth's awakening, and the planet is now facing Armageddon, because Meteor has been summoned. It's falling down slowly but surely. It hangs over the sky as a symbol of the world's demise. It is now the end of days. It's at this point that the world map theme gets a lot darker and sinister, and every NPC in every town you visited starts accepting the fact that they might not be around much longer. I've always been fascinated by Armageddon stories. What would you do if you knew the planet's time limit was coming up, if you only had a week left to live? It's one of the reasons I love The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask so much. Before the summoning of Meteor, Tifa was knocked unconscious by Weapon's blast and wakes up in the presence of her friends and the Shinra Company. And Shinra, still being awful evil assholes, try to execute everyone on national television. It seems like this is the end, but luckily, one of the weapons attacks Junon and it buys our heroes time to escape. It's at this point that you finally get an airship, as Barret and Cait Sith hijack the Highwind, an old aircraft that Sid himself worked on back when he was under Shinra's employ. And I love the Highwind theme so much. At this point, you control Tifa. The world is open to you to fly around wherever you want, and the search for Cloud begins. When Tifa finds Cloud, she discovers that he's been poisoned heavily by Mako and is basically catatonic. And after another weapon attacks the village Cloud is resting in, the two fall into the lifestream trying to escape, putting them into some kind of weird subconscious dream world where Tifa has to try and reconstruct Cloud's memories and set the record straight. And it was at this point that I really came to love Cloud and Tifa's characters. This is when Cloud became super relatable to me, and I got all choked up thinking about the story. So Sephiroth was not lying. During the Nibelheim flashback, it was indeed a different soldier named Zack who accompanied him to check out the reactors. It's who Tifa remembers, and there was photographic evidence to support this. But the reason Cloud still vividly remembers all of the events that happened is because he absolutely was there. He never made it into soldier after he left home. He didn't have what it takes, and instead he enlisted as a regular grunt in the military. Cloud was one of the guys in blue who joined Sephiroth and Zack, and the reason he kept his helmet on the entire time was because he didn't want anyone to recognize him. He failed to become soldier, and he was humiliated. The real Cloud was not an amazing badass. He was a shy, socially awkward kid who always wanted to be close to Tifa, but he never knew how to bond with people. He didn't know how to fit in and thought he was different. He always assumed that Tifa hated him, that she didn't like him. And after Tifa accidentally got injured while climbing Mount Nibel, the townsfolk actually blamed him when he was just trying to stop her. Cloud hated himself. You get the impression when you see him talking to his mother that he's just not happy with how his life turned out. The entire reason he wanted to join Soldier was to be so strong that Tifa would actually respect him. But the sad part is that Tifa always liked him. I mean, Tifa took up martial arts. She's a take-no-shit kind of gal who was probably both the bartender and the bouncer over in Avalanche's bar. When she asks Cloud to make the promise to protect her when he joins Soldier, it's not because she needs the protection. She just wanted him to come back. She didn't want him to leave. And when she heard that Cloud was coming back, she actually waited outside the front gate the entire time just to see him. And she never did because he was wearing that stupid helmet. Ugh, my heart. Cloud became incredibly relatable here. I myself wasn't that much of a social butterfly as a kid. I was a skinny gamer who was terrible at sports. I very much felt the kind of insecurities that Cloud does in this game. And I always choke up thinking about how he never really understood how much Tifa cared about him. When Sephiroth attacked Nibelheim, Cloud raced to the reactor. He took Zack's Buster Sword and stabbed Sephiroth right in the back. He fulfilled his promise to protect Tifa when things got bad, and when Sephiroth tried to leave, Cloud stops him and ends up getting stabbed through the chest for it. But, in an amazing display of power that Cloud's always had, he grabbed the sword by the blade and actually chucked Sephiroth's pasty ass over the balcony and into the Mako, getting rid of the bastard until he eventually washes up over at the northern crater. So, suffering a major stab wound, Zack and Cloud get taken by Hojo to be experimented on, hence why Cloud has Genova cells inside of him. Zack and Cloud manage to escape Nibelheim, and Cloud is suffering from so much Mako poisoning that he's pretty fucked up. They hit the road, Zack putting Cloud in similar soldier gear to his, and he figures it'd be a good idea to become a mercenary for hire now, since he's done with the Shinra. Eventually, the escape comes to an end when the Shinra catches up. Zack is straight up killed by grunts, shot repeatedly execution style, and the guys leave Cloud behind since he's practically a vegetable at this point. And because of his poisoning, his extreme PTSD, Cloud truly loses it after this moment, adopting a new persona for himself that mixed his life with Zack's. He was now a mercenary, and he was now looking for work in the megacity of Midgar. So when Final Fantasy VII started, we truly did pick up just as Cloud the Mercenary was born. Tifa found him at the train station, noticed his memory wasn't all there, and wanted to look after him the entire time. And with that, Cloud finally rejoins the party, and the quest to stop Meteor goes on from there. Disc 2 actually flies by rather quickly. Lots of hunting down Materia, taking down Shinra, and eventually the Shinra end up firing a massive cannon from Midgar to pierce a protective bubble around the northern crater. The idea is that before Aerith died, she was actually praying in the altar to create the ultimate white magic spell, Holy, which has the power to stop Meteor. But Sephiroth is stopping Holy from leaving, and until he's taken out for good, the world is doomed. Rufus ends up getting killed by a weapon, Cloud and friends take the last fight to Hojo and the other Shinra executives, and Shinra is basically done for. With one day left until Meteor drops, everyone goes their separate ways to say their last goodbyes. Cloud and Tifa have nowhere to go and spend their time underneath the Highwind. Even if no one comes back, as long as I'm with you, as long as you're by my side, I won't give up, even if I'm scared. Oh god, I fucking love these two. These two have been apart for so long, and now they have 1 day left until the world is destroyed. As far as they're concerned, defeating Sephiroth might not save the world. They could still die in 24 hours. So they spend what little time they have left together, because they truly love each other and always have. Oh god, I fucking ship it so hard. Cloud and Tifa are my favorite couple in any Final Fantasy game. This game can still give me the feels even in 2017. I love Final Fantasy VII, man. It's so good. It's too pure for this world. And I know, this video is over an hour long already, but there's still so many things I haven't mentioned. This game is huge, and it has everything, including what I consider to be the best soundtrack in the whole entire series. Nobuo Uematsu? Legend. God. His music is untouchable, and I will never forget this score. When Disc 3 starts up, all you really have to do is defeat Sephiroth. Final boss is available right away, but there's still tons of side stuff to do, and even though the plot says that the meteor will drop in 24 hours, you can do whatever you want. The meteor ain't dropping till you beat the game, so don't worry. You can still check out the Gold Saucer, an amusement park that features a ridiculous amount of things to do. Like a battle coliseum, where you have full control of the character and get increasingly more handicapped in the hopes of getting more battle points to buy prizes with. There's little arcade machines where you can arm wrestle and play rock, paper, scissors and basketball, and a weird video game where you try to help Mog the Moogle get laid and have little baby Moogles. Okay then. And then there's the arcade machines that let you replay action scenes. I kinda glossed over all this, but yeah, when Cloud and friends leave Midgar, there's actually a really fun, intense chase scene where you slash at enemies who are trying to damage you and your friends. This part is so damn fun. It controls well, the music is great, and I'm so glad that when you reach the Gold Saucer, you can replay it. Before you reach the Northern Crater, Cloud actually borrows a snowboard from a kid in town, and there's a snowboarding minigame! This is a thing in a Final Fantasy game! And it's fun, too! There's a submarine minigame, a tower defense minigame. At one point there's a rhythm sequence minigame when you're trying to blend in and impress Rufus. Final Fantasy VII is incredibly experimental, and it's a miracle that all of these gameplay styles work as well as they do. They aren't forced down your throats, they aren't demanding, and they're actually great additions that add to the game. Oh, and there's also Chocobo racing, another activity you can perform in the Gold Saucer, and this ties into a whole nother aspect of Final Fantasy VII that some fans absolutely loved. The Chocobo breeding. You can still ride these yellow chickens around to avoid battles like in the previous 5 games, but now you actually have to catch them in battles. First you need to equip a Chocobo lore Materia to one of your characters, and then you need to feed them some greens to calm them down and make sure they don't run away. Don't attack the Chocobos either, because that'll definitely spook them. But when you catch one, you can bring it to a Chocobo farm and keep it in a stable so you can pick it up whenever you want. And when you get more Chocobo, they can actually breed with each other to produce offspring. And you want to race these guys in the Gold Saucer because this will actually improve their ranking, and this actually affects what kind of kid they'll give birth to. So all of a sudden you could get a black Chocobo, or a green one, or a blue one, and they all do different things. Some can climb mountains, some can walk across the ocean, but if you manage to breed the right kinds, you'll get a gold Chocobo which can go wherever it wants. And this can lead you to some incredible treasures like the ultimate summon in the game. If you thought the main gameplay took up a lot of time, I knew people who spent 60 hours alone just raising Chocobos like it was Tamagotchi or a Chow Garden or something. Talk about addicting side content. Oh, and that ultimate summon, by the way, is called Knights of the Round. It's a summon that hits enemies over 13 times in a minute-long, over-the-top animation. God, I love summons in 7. Before, in previous games, the summon showed up, did a little effect, and then that was it, right? But the ambition in this game is high, so here summons have these ridiculous animations. Ramuh comes in atop a giant pillar, doing an electric light show before he kills everybody. Titan actually pulls the ground out from enemies and crushes them with the land. And this game actually has a form of Bahamut called Bahamut Zero, where he flies to outer space and proceeds to fire a nuclear flare laser that probably destroyed a village or two just to eliminate the enemy you're fighting. This game fucking rules! But hey, you're gonna need nukes to take out the weapons. Like Final Fantasy V, this game features a whole bunch of Superbosses that are way harder than Sephiroth. And if you want to test your JRPG gaming cred, you've gotta try beating Emerald and Ruby weapon. Ruby in particular is the hardest enemy I've faced in the whole Final Fantasy retrospective so far. He's a boss who can't be damaged unless 2 of your party members are dead. So you'll need some good buffing spells, the summon Hades to take advantage of, and a fine fortitude to overcome this bastard. In general, I don't think Final Fantasy VII is all that hard. It's more challenging than 4 or 6, but nothing you can't handle if you're using everything at your disposal. But the weapons? These fuckers are brutal, and you're gonna have a lot of fun trying to take them out. And it's worth it too, because you can get the ultimate master materias, and even a gold Chocobo if you do. In case you don't like the whole breeding system anyway. There's a lot to do in Final Fantasy VII, and still so much I could say about the game. Why I like the Turks, some of the great monster designs, how great it is to return to Midgar near the end. I could talk for hours because I genuinely love this game. But this video has gone on far too long as it is. It's time to end this. Cloud and friends finally head down to the northern crater, going deep into the earth for one last showdown with Sephiroth. It's here we take on Jenova as well, who serves as the warm-up for the main course. Like all final bosses, Sephiroth transforms into a grotesque god monster thing because of course he does. But there's 2 forms to this guy, and the second form has an amazing theme song that uses an actual choir to chant the chorus during the fight. Just when you think this game can't get any more epic, one-winged angel happens. Sephiroth also has this ridiculous move called Supernova, where Meteor manages to destroy every planet in the solar system until it eventually reaches the main party. It's this over-the-top, super long animation that's supposed to fill you with all kinds of dread, like, oh shit, I'm so dead, there's no way I'm surviving this! But in reality, this move will never kill you. It does a certain percentage of damage, but if you guys are 1 HP, it never actually ends you. It's all flash and no substance. Fits Sephiroth like a glove. But it's not that bad of a final boss, and you should be able to beat him. Sephiroth is truly dead. Our heroes have done all they can. But just as they're about to leave, Cloud gets one last out-of-body experience. He senses Sephiroth even still, and his spirit flies out of himself to what I can only surmise is Cloud's last battle deep in his subconscious. Perhaps there's a lore reason, maybe it's Jenova trying to control him again, but this scene is far more symbolic. Ever since he was a kid, Cloud has felt weak, insecure. He wants to prove he's special. He wants to be Sephiroth. But he couldn't be him, and he couldn't beat him. That's what he always told himself. His power's unlike anything you've ever seen. There's no way I could have killed him. But in this moment, he has one last chance to prove that he can do this. And this is the fight in its entirety. Cloud just straight up kicks Sephiroth's ass. He doesn't even get a shot in. If you never got Omni Slash, his ultimate limit break before this point, it's one of the coolest things in the world to see for the first time. And when Sephiroth dies for good, he's bloody, he's shocked, he can't believe that Cloud truly ended him. And with that, the chosen one to rule the planet is gone. Truly, forever. It's fucking perfect. This isn't just about showing that Cloud was better than Sephiroth. It's about him casting away his insecurities, shedding his doubt, finally embracing who he really is. The real Sephiroth died in the previous battle, but this is where Cloud finally comes to peace with it. It's one of my favorite ending set pieces in any of these Final Fantasy games. Again, it's perfect. In the last moments of this surreal dreamscape, Cloud sees Lifestream flowing around him, and Aerith reaching out to him from beyond the afterlife. And then reality kicks in, cause oh shit, Holy's coming! Everyone barely escapes in the airship as the blinding white light of Holy bursts out and proceeds to head directly to Meteor. The ending is one incredible 9-minute FMV sequence with one of the best pieces of music that Nobuo Uematsu's ever done. You don't know how it's going to turn out. Holy reaches Meteor and you think it's going to be fine, but Meteor plows right through it. Oh shit! That's it, man! Game over! But right then, Tifa notices something in the distance. A spark of green energy. Lifestream. It comes from every corner of the planet heading towards Meteor. Possibly because of Aerith. With the Lifestream's arrival, everything ends with spectacle and wonder. This is my favorite ending in the whole entire series. God damn, this game makes me emotional. After the end credits, we get an epilogue that takes place 500 years later, showing that Red 13 definitely made it off the airship, and the planet is fine. Midgar is no longer a life-sucking megacity, but a ruin covered in plant life. And that was Final Fantasy VII. So I don't know if you could tell, but I really love this game. Final Fantasy VII was not just another RPG in the series. This game was super ambitious, reached for the stars, and it paid off tremendously. This is the best example of what I would call a video game epic. For the first 3D RPG in the series, it had hundreds of pre-rendered backgrounds made from scratch. Awe-inspiring animations in battle when it could have easily done the bare minimum. Dozens of activities to do, whether it be motorcycle chases or chocobo breeding or whatever. A cast of characters so memorable, people still get super excited when Cloud shows up in anything. It broke new ground in every single aspect, and what I love the most is that even after 20 years, this game still holds up rather nicely. I love the characters, I love the music, I love the story, I love the gameplay. Everything in this game has stuck with me since 1997, and I've played through it numerous times. Like, more than 10 times for sure. Hell, when this game was re-released on the PlayStation 4, I got the Platinum Trophy immediately. Any excuse to replay the game is A-okay. There's so much in the game that I didn't cover in this video, and I can only recommend people play it for themselves if they haven't before. Hearing me talk about it and playing it yourself are two very different things. Certainly it's not the prettiest game in the world anymore, it could be more challenging, but I can't think of a game that makes me happier than this one. I can never consider this game overrated because it still gets to me every time I play it. Now, there's a lot of expanded universe stuff that I won't be covering in this retrospective. A movie, a shooter game starring Vincent, an anime, a prequel about Zack. This game has been thoroughly milked. And if I'm gonna be honest, I will always prefer the original game over all of it. I love 7, but that doesn't mean I think Advent Children is a good movie. Eventually, this game is going to have a remake on the PlayStation 4 with updated graphics, a new battle system, voice acting, the works. Do I expect it to be better than the original? Nope. But I'll give it a shot anyway, and I hope it turns out really fun. I may cover the remake after I do 15's video in the year 2022, because this game so isn't coming out anytime soon. But yeah, folks, this video went way longer than I thought it was going to be. But when I'm talking about one of the best video games I've ever played, I guess that's going to happen. It's a time capsule of the best that the PlayStation had to offer, and it's one of the best experiences I ever had playing a video game. To me, Final Fantasy VII is perfection. Jeez, this video took a long time to make. Sorry about that. From now on, Final Fantasy videos aren't going to have release dates, and I can't promise one a month. If I want to keep my sanity, then I can only say that Final Fantasy VIII's video will arrive when it's done. And that game's next, by the way. So until next time, folks, I am the Great Clement. Toodles.